Hey up, right, at last. Don't be fooled by the sunshine, it's freezing. But we have got a dry day so that I can actually do a detailed walk around of the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. Now, the first thing that struck me about this bike, I mean, you know, it's okay seeing these things at shows or maybe even in a dealership, although I suppose a dealership's a little bit different. You don't get a full appreciation of the quality of a machine until you've been able to spend some time with it and really sort of look at all the nuts and bolts of how it's put together. The first thing that struck me when this Himalayan arrived is I couldn't help but compare it to a bike that I had just over a decade ago, a BMW GS 800 Adventure, which was a bike, to be honest, I never really got along with. But when it came to comparing quality, the Himalayan really surprised me. Now, okay, you know, it's over 10 years ago. One of the things about the BMW that always bothered me was that at the time, I think with the luggage on the back, it was something like £10,300, and this is a long time ago. I was never really impressed with the quality of that bike, the quality of the finish. So immediately when the Himalayan arrived, you know, in my head, there was a constant comparison with that bike going on. I couldn't help it. It's just one of those things. And I've got to say, for a bike that's what, just over £6,000, I don't know what it would cost with all the extra luggage and that on it. Royal Enfield are doing a far better job for less money now than BMW were doing 10 years ago. I don't know whether the GS 800 Adventure is even available anymore. It's not a bike that I'm really interested in. But what I can say is that looking around this bike, okay, it's a 450 versus an 800, but looking around this bike, the quality is far better than the quality of that BMW that I had 10, 11 years ago. Let's start with the paintwork. Now, first of all, I need to apologise for the state of this bike because quite literally, apart from the very first day when I was able to take it out for a quick 4-mile run, every time I've jumped on this bike to go anywhere, it's absolutely thrown it down with rain. And we were out on it yesterday. It rained all the time we were on it again yesterday, so it was a matter of just shoving it away in the garage when we got home. And unfortunately, I've not had a chance to clean it, but you know, it's an adventure bike and they're meant to be dirty. They look better when they're dirty, so I'm told. Now, this is a satin, some people would call it matte, but it's not actually. It's a satin finish paintwork all over this particular model of the Himalayan. And matte paintwork is actually quite difficult to achieve. When you're painting a bike in a gloss finish, any little dirt nibs, which are just a byproduct of spraying paint, it can't be avoided. You will always get some. Any dirt nibs have to be ground down with what they call a denibber, and then, you know, the finish polished back to get a nice even finish on the surface. And that's across the automotive industry. You know, everybody is affected by this phenomenon. When you're working with matte or satin paintwork, you can't denib. And that was always one of the problems with BMW's paint finishes. They were horrific, but there were always a few dirt nibs evident in the paintwork. And as I say, you know, with a matte and a satin finish, there's nothing you can do about it. You've just got to leave it there and try and minimise it at the paint preparation stage and the cleaning of your equipment as much as you possibly can. I've examined this bike from top to bottom. There's a lot of matte paintwork on it. I honestly cannot find one paint nib on it anywhere. And if you don't know what a paint nib is, it basically, it'll be a tiny bit of solidified paint that's either got caught in the spray nozzle on the spraying apparatus, or it may be something which is actually in the paint as well. You know, you generally speaking, what you'll do is you will sieve the paint several times before loading it into your spray gun to eliminate those, because especially when you're using a matting agent, which, you know, this is just ordinary automotive paint, but they put a matting agent into the paint at the mixing stage, which stops it from going gloss. It keeps it in a matte state when it dries out. And unfortunately, no matter how fastidious you are with the mixing process, gun cleaning, that kind of thing, inevitably there will always be dirt nibs. And you know, they're just little bits of solidified material from the actual makeup of the paint itself. There are none on this bike anywhere. It's absolutely squeaky clean. The other thing is, I've noticed, now I can't completely make my mind up what I think they've done. This will be a base coat and clear paint. So the base coat is the colour, and then they'll go over it with a matte lacquer. I think, looking at it, either these are extraordinarily high quality graphics that they've stuck on, because these are just, you know, for want of a better word, stickers. They're either really high quality that have had the edges chamfered down, or they've been put on the base coat and then a very thin coat of lacquer has been put over the top to prevent them from peeling, which is always a danger when you're using graphics. Probably not so much nowadays, but you know, it used to be a major hassle. BMW, last time I looked, were painting, lacquering, and then just slapping stickers on, which always, again, bothered me about BMW. You know, you were paying a premium for a premium brand, but to my mind, you weren't getting premium paint finishes on them. Absolutely no complaints about the paint quality on this bike anywhere. It's, as near as damn it, perfect. In fact, I'm struggling to find any issues with it anywhere. You know, I think Royal Enfield have definitely come of age now with their painting. One of the best in the business, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the other problem that I had with the BMW was it was a sort of a sand-coloured matte finish. I think it had been painted by hand, and it had been a pretty slapdash job, because when you got out in strong sunlight, occasionally you could see shadows where the surface hadn't been covered properly with paint, and you could actually see the primer underneath, little cloudy patches. It was awful. But there's none of that on the Royal Enfield. Now, we're used to seeing the short upside down forks on the 650 models, like the Super Meteor and the Shotgun. It's the first time we've seen them on a smaller capacity single cylinder bike. Excellent front forks, can't really be faulted. They are set up a little bit firmer than on the two twin model bikes, which is par for the course, really. It's designed to be a dual purpose bike, so it needs a little bit more spring power. Can't fault them. I'll go over these in full on the full review, bearing in mind this is just a walk around, a detailed walk around. Yeah, nice shocks. I'm glad that Royal Enfield are using these, because suspension is really important on a bike. So let's talk about the rear suspension. Now, the rear monoshock suspension on this bike has actually been the biggest surprise. As far as I can tell, I think it's got about 10 preload settings for the spring. This is the best rear suspension to date that I've seen on a Royal Enfield motorcycle. Normally they have those shower forks on the front, which makes the front end really nice, but the back end lets the bike down. These are fantastic. In fact, you know, once again, I would say these outperform the BMW shocks that I had 10 years ago. I mean, they may be better nowadays, but even comparing it to their super duper electronic suspension system that they had on the 1200s, This is a brilliant suspension setup. I'm sure it's probably a budget. I don't actually know who it's made by, but it is a phenomenal rear suspension setup. Most of the riding that I've done on this bike so far has been with a pillion, and this suspension has behaved impeccably. Now, all round sort of bodywork protection on the bike is pretty much what we've come to expect from an adventure spec bike these days. We've got a full tank protector here. This is Royal Enfield's usual, I think it'll be mild steel that's been powder coated. This is the same process that I've seen used on accessories for the other models in Royal Enfield's range. There's no problem with rust or anything with this. It's a really durable finish. So we've got the tank protector, we've got an engine protector at the bottom here. One thing I have noticed occasionally, I do catch my boot on this part here. For my taste, it could have done with being a little bit higher up, but it's not a problem. It was only the first couple of times that I rode the bike that I kept sort of smacking my toes into that while I was, adjusting myself in the saddle and getting ready to set off at junctions, that kind of thing. Not a great issue. It might just be down to me, and I will get into that in the main review, because I think there may have been a reason for me having that problem, which I'll cover there. Braking front and rear is taken care of by the now standard B-Bray twin pot caliper on the front with a floating disc. Good braking action from the front. Also, the rear single pot caliper is a lot keener than we're used to on a lot of bikes. It's a good braking system. I mean, as I've said, most of our riding has been in wet weather. It's rained without fail every time we've gone out on this bike, apart from the very first run when I first received it. And this bike actually handles really well in the wet. It feels very safe and secure, and it does inspire confidence while you're riding. Wheels. Now, everybody's been screaming out for these for years. We've got a tubeless system, tubeless spoked rims, Seat shod with a 21-inch front, I believe, and a 17 at the rear. Now, the rear is definitely a radial, but there are no markings that I can find on this tyre to suggest whether it's radial or cross-ply. With it being tubeless, I would reason that it will be a radial, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Seat tyres, for once, they've not given them a silly name. They're just called Grip, which, is self-explanatory, really. These tyres are great in the wet on the road. I don't know what they're like off-road, because I'm not an off-roader, as you know, but really grippy, confidence-inspiring tyres. I know a lot of people slate Seat tyres. I've got no issues with any of their tyres that I've trialled so far, and these are no different. A really dependable dual-purpose tyre. Front mudguards, it's all ABS plastic. The peak has been painted and it doesn't go all the way back. It's really just to stop stuff from being flung up in front, going onto the headlamp and the rider, etc. It works really well, but your main front mudguard is underneath it, which again we've seen with a lot of adventure bikes over the years now, and it also incorporates a stone guard for your exposed stanchion on the upside down forks. Got a similar affair at the rear with a sort of a hugger fastened to the rear swing arm here, and then of course you've got the rear part of the mudguard which keeps the rest of the wet and filth off the rider and pillion. Again, fairly standard setup. It's nice actually that a lot of manufacturers don't include a hugger like this, but it does keep all the crap off your rear suspension and the back of the engine, etc. So, you know, this bike has done a lot of mileage in crappy wet weather, and it's done a really good job of keeping all the crap off that rear suspension unit, as you can see. Rear swing arm is a substantially beefed up piece of engineering compared to that we see on most of the road bikes. I can't actually remember what it was like on the original Himalayan and the Scram 411. I suspect they were a standard box section. A lot more engineering has gone into this, although I did notice that they have used the cut price chain adjuster at the back here, which actually I really like these. You know, they may not be expensive to produce. They're very simple, but it does make it very easy for a rider to adjust the chain when necessary. It's probably one of the best systems available at the moment. I've not seen it with any other manufacturer. Now, lighting, as far as I can tell, all round is LED. We've got the same system where when you switch the ignition on, the light doesn't come on automatically, which back in the old days when we had halogen lamps, I could see the point in that, but they've still continued that with the LED lighting, which strictly speaking isn't necessary, but the daytime running light doesn't come on until you start the engine. So flat batteries are certainly not going to be a feature of these bikes as they you know, get to the sort of 2-3 year old stage. Indicators are LED. Nothing too spectacular there, it's stuff that we're used to seeing now. It's a press to cancel system, but the rear cluster is actually something to talk about. Now, these are very similar to the units that Motorn Customs have been building sort of over the past year or so. They're a 3-in-1 rear indicator system. If you'll notice, there is no tail light. These constitute your tail light. They're also your brake lights, and of course your indicators. And I do think that serves to really clean the back end of the bike up. You know, tail lights, sometimes manufacturers get them right. They've got to adhere to certain specifications laid down by law. Sometimes they get them right, sometimes they end up being a bit of an eyesore, and a lot of people go to a lot of lengths to eradicate them from the bikes. Absolutely no need to with this system. And we do of course just have a rear number plate light discreetly positioned just above the number plate. Welding on the chassis has all been done really well. You know, it's really neat and tidy, butt welding all the way around it. Nothing to worry about, nothing for people to get upset about, I don't think, really. It doesn't get much tidier than that. Very neat and tidy radiator grille. The radiator is quite wide, but you know, that radiator grille tidies it up nicely. It's, as far as I can tell, it's pressed aluminium, quite thick as well. Good robust unit. You know, I can see accessory manufacturers struggling to find improvements on this bike because everything really is pretty much spot on. And there's a little black sump guard at the bottom there, which also forms, well, it's like a two-part sump guard because half of it is a sump guard, the other half is a guard for the downpipe on the exhaust system. Both different colours, strangely, which does sort of break up the image a little bit, but yeah, they are what they are. Now, the exhaust system is quite utilitarian, to be honest. It's stainless steel, pretty much what you would expect to see on any bike of this ilk. You know, nothing spectacular about it, but well made, rust free because it's stainless, and very functional. Now, I'll cover vibration off in the main review on this bike. I just wanted to point out Ice-Elastics. I think it was, I don't know whether it was BSA or Norton that created Ice-Elastics back in the 50s or the 60s, and that was isolating certain components from the chassis and the rider to reduce vibration from the engine. They used to mount the engine in what are called isolastics then. The only place I've noticed them on here, and it is quite obtrusive, is we've got isolastic mountings for the rider's foot pegs. There's nothing for the pillion, but we do have isolastic mountings for the rider's foot pegs. We've also got quite a soft rubber insert, which again will help to reduce vibration. Vibration's not really an issue on this bike. I don't know whether there was really necessary. In fact, there is a case for saying that isolastics can make low vibration more obtrusive. I'm not sure which way it is with this bike, to be honest, because the only place you do feel a little bit of buzzing is through the foot pegs occasionally. So maybe it was a lot worse and they've introduced these isolastics to, you know, sort of stem that. I don't know, but it's not a bad bike anyway. Now, your gear lever and your rear foot brake, as you would expect on a bike of this type, are just angled pieces of steel. So if they're bent out of place, they can easily be bent back again, so you can continue your journey without, you know, there's nothing worse than having a cast part or something like that that just snaps off because there's nothing you can do with that. Now, standard mirrors, for once, are pretty damn good. I've got no issues with these. You do just catch the edge of your elbow in the view. I found, you know, I adjusted them the first time we went out. It gives you a really good clear view. For handlebar mirrors, these are pretty good. Be no need to immediately change these for something else, touring mirrors or whatever. They give a good rear view, no complaints with those whatsoever. The screen's quite interesting. Now, it's not perfect, but I can tell from the design of this that they've not just sort of drawn a pretty shape and then produced it and they've got lucky. There's some thought gone behind this. We've got the side skirts here, and we've also got the shoulder there. Now, it is a pretty narrow screen, but I think that belies the overall performance this screen gives. Obviously, it's not designed for looking through. It's designed for keeping wind off the rider. It works really well. It just gives a little bit of buffeting, gentle buffeting around the chin and collar area. I didn't notice it moving my helmet around at all at high speeds on motorways, 70 miles an hour. So yeah, it's not perfect. There is a little bit of buffeting around the chin, the face, and you know, the collar of your jacket. But other than that, it does a really good job of keeping the wind off the rider's body so you can ride at speed for longer. And this bike has no problem getting up to 70 miles an hour. I'll get that out there now. It's just that you do get a little bit of buffeting around the top of your shoulders and your chin area. Having said that, it's not bad. I know on my, going back to that GS Adventure 800 that I used to have, again, sorry to keep harping on about that, but wind buffeting around the helmet was horrendous. It was one of the reasons I got rid of the bike, because it was totally unadjustable, and you know, you were like a nodding dog all the time you were riding at speed. It was really difficult to keep your head steady. There's none of that with this screen, but there is just a little bit of dirty air around the head area, which, to be fair, I think the second time I rode this bike, I didn't really notice it that much. It was just a bit obtrusive initially, but there's definitely been some very serious development gone into the design of that shield. You know, it's not just a case of they built it to look good and that was it. It's very functional. It does its job really well. Switchgear is all pretty standard Royal Enfield fare, really. I think there's some sort of engineering nylon. We've got the usual sort of swivel switch at the top here for starting an engine cut-off. We've got the mode button that switches between normal road use mode and eco mode with or without ABS. Your hazard warning switch is just a red button that you push at the front. Presumably, just see how this works. Push to activate and push to cancel. On the left hand side, it sort of mirrors the right hand side. The swivel button here is for your main beam, your dip beam and your pass light. Indicators, left, right, push to cancel. We've also got the horn button there, and we've got this toggle or sort of cursor button here. I've not got on with that very well. It does work, but we'll go through it in a moment. At the front here we've got a home button which helps you to configure the TFT screen, which I'll go through with you now. Right, so the display on this bike is fully digital. I'm going to move around to the other side of the bike so I can get at everything. So this is your main rev counter here, and your speed is indicated numerically in this panel here. You've also got your gear indicator. At the moment it's in neutral, as you can see, which tells you what gear you're in. Just on the inside of this sort of semicircle here is your fuel gauge. Now I've done about 110 miles on this and I've not filled it up yet, and it's still showing that I've got a considerable range left in the fuel tank. It's only gone down by 1/4. It'll be interesting to see whether it's one of those systems where it indicates you're full until you're nearly empty and then suddenly tells you that you're empty. The jury's still out on that one. I'll report on that in the main review on the bike. And your indicators, you've got a left and right. They're not a light again, it's part of the display. That was the hazards. So you've got your left and your right. Now your mode button on your right hand switch gear. This gives you access. I found it to be quite awkward, to be quite honest. I've not quite got my head around it because I'm not one for messing. By just toggling through on that switch, you've got performance mode with ABS on and off. You've got eco mode with the ABS on and off. You've got to be quick when selecting because it doesn't give you an awful lot of time. It could have done with pausing a little bit longer. I've left it in performance mode all the time. I've not tried eco mode yet. Again, I'll cover that in the main review. Now this toggle switch on the other side. Now if you press this cursor stick in, you've got a choice between, you can toggle between trip meter 1, trip meter 2, fuel range, which it's interesting, as I say, I've done 110 miles on this bike. When I first received it, it showed me a range of 179 miles, and 110 miles later, I've still got 149 miles left on the tank, which is impressive. Fuel consumption, that's real time. We've got voltage, which tells you the obviously the condition of your battery. When your services are due, and your engine temperature in a real-time readout, and that's basically it. Now, going back to fuel consumption, yeah, I can't remember where I found that before now. It's telling me that I'm getting 83.3 miles to the gallon, if I remember correctly. I'll see if I can bring that up. Oh, you've also got a clock here and your outside temperature. Warming up a little bit now in the sun. Right, in your settings you've got, and again you have to use your cursor stick to control this. Appearance, I don't really know what that does. Let's press it, see what we've got. So you've got a choice, trip 1, odo, trip 1, trip 2, outside temperature, that's all there is in there. We'll leave it on odo. I don't know what that golden line is. Oh, right, okay, so that's the golden line there. Background. Now what I've noticed about this setup, obviously we've been driving in bad weather, so your light conditions are constantly changing. Your white background with predominantly black lettering and indicators is what you have in daylight. when it gets darker, the whole screen turns black, and then all these indicators come up in white, which I suppose will be easier on your eyes if you're driving during the hours of darkness. So that's your dark theme there. There you go, look. And it does that. It's actually quite annoying when you're driving through rainy, sort of dim sort of circumstances, because at first I thought there was a problem with the cluster, because it kept turning black like that and then going white again, and I thought the unit was failing, but it wasn't. It was just simply a matter of there we've got the auto setting there. I put it back on auto. It was just simply a matter of the changing light conditions were altering the setting on it, which, yeah, I thought it had broken down at first. Now if we continue, we've got a brightness control, screen type. So we've got a choice between analog and digital. So let's just see what happens. If we put it onto digital, you've still got your speed here. Let's just see what happens when I start this up. Yeah, so we've just got a graduated scale for, to be honest, I think most people are probably going to want to leave that on analog. Not a great difference, but it's nice that you've got a choice. So we've been through trip preferences. My vehicle system. This allows you to set your clock. You can choose your speed and distance values from, you know, kilometers or miles, etc. Quite self-explanatory, I think. Fuel consumption, it gives you a choice of kilometers per litre, litre per 100 kilometers, MPG UK and MPG US. Obviously I'll leave it on MPG UK. Right, what I've discovered here as I've been messing around with it, you use the toggle switch to select the value that you want, and then to come out of that value, you press the home switch and it brings you back. Temperature, so going from those, you've got your temperature, which gives you presumably the external temperatures in Celsius or Fahrenheit. Again, we'll leave it on Celsius. Language, I think that's self-explanatory. I don't know how many languages there are in there. And we've got a factory reset, which I'm not going to touch. I'll come out of there before I do anything that I shouldn't be doing. So yeah, a pretty comprehensive system for those people that, you know, like this sort of technical stuff on the bikes. Personally, I can live without it, although I do see the attraction. But again, you know, a bike of this price, to have that sort of versatility with your clocks, I think it's quite astounding. We're living in the future. Now the seat, we've got the main rider's pad here, or saddle. It's in like it's got like a suede or nap finish to it. What I did discover with this, which I was impressed with, was when this is wet, it doesn't hold water in the same way that a straight vinyl seat would hold it. So your pants don't get quite as wet as they normally would when you sit on a wet seat, which is always handy when you've not got anything suitable to wipe your seat before you get on it. So yeah, I like that finish. You know, it does get wet, but it tends to stay damp rather than water pooling on it, which is nice. Now your pillion pad is separate, and there's a reason for that. If I can just find the keyhole, which is under here. Right, we've got the toolkit under there. I'm not going to go through the toolkit because it's a pretty standard Royal Enfield toolkit. You know, the usual good stuff, but we do have a C-spanner in there for adjusting the rear suspension. which again is quite easy to access. Again, I was quite pleased with that because Royal Enfield do have a habit of designing some of the bikes so that you can't adjust the suspension. Now the rider seat is adjustable for height. Underneath, and again this is very similar to what I've seen on BMWs in the past. You've got two positioning bars. Now this is set on the lowest position because I've got short legs. You simply release that from there, move it to that position there, so that will make the front of the seat higher. And now we've got a similar system at the back here, which will make the back of the seat higher. Now the beauty of a double system like this, of course, is you can have the rear higher and the front lower, or vice versa. It allows you to tailor the seating position to suit your specific ergonomics. I'll leave it at the lowest settings. I can flat foot very easy on this bike on the lowest settings. I will have a mess around with these for the main review. But yeah, it's nice that you've got that ability to tailor the rider's seat, you know, specifically for the rider, because this bike, it's not particularly heavy, but there's a lot of the weight is quite high up. So it is important that you've got good ground contact and, you know, the ergonomics are right for the rider. Otherwise, the bike could be a little bit of a liability, I think, for some riders. But yeah, it's a specification you just don't expect to see on a motorcycle at this price point. Royal Enfield are way ahead of everybody. Now, rider protection, we've got a padded, I don't know what you call these, it replaces the crossbar pad, chest guard, whatever. I've never really worked out what they're for, but I actually thought it was some sort of toolbox or something to start with, until I realised you couldn't open it. But yeah, nice touch. It's like a sort of a foam type finish on it. Right, the handguards, really robust piece of kit. You know, again, a lot better built than I've seen on certain German bikes. We've got a cast, I think it's cast metal piece here that holds it all together. Then we have a cast aluminium sort of spine with just a plastic guard that actually fastens onto that span. Really well built, nice piece of engineering. It's not very good for keeping rain or cold off your hands, I don't think. I found that in the rain my hands did get very wet, but that's a whole different story. I need to talk to you about weather protection on this bike in a later video, because that is a subject that we need to approach. We haven't got the usual B-Bray master cylinder or reservoir on the top here. It's a sort of a six-sided affair. There is no name on it, so I don't know whether it's made by B-Bray or someone else, but yeah, it does look more premium than what we've seen on some of the other Royal Enfield models. Although, having said that, Royal Enfield have stepped up the game quite a lot in recent models. You know, they're not as blocky and basic looking as they used to be. Right, so handling the bike when not actually riding it. For a 450cc bike, I'm not going to lie, this is a bit of a behemoth. It's more ungainly than heavy. You know, it's not a particularly heavy bike, although I'm sure all this luggage does add some weight to it. It's everything's quite high up and everything's very wide and bulky, so you know, it's not as easy as moving something like a classic 350 around. I've got to admit, a little bit more concentration and strength is required. Once you get on the bike, all that disappears. It's a really nice bike to ride. It's just a little bit cumbersome in parking situations or when you're putting it away, that kind of thing. Main stand, again, it does require a little bit more effort than some of the other bikes in the Royal Enfield range, but it's no great hassle getting it up on the sides, on the centre stand. I think a lot of people will probably just leave it on the side stand, but that's up to you. Right, that sun's out and it's getting quite warm now. I think I've covered most of the important features on this bike. If you feel that I've missed anything out, let me know in the comments section down below, and I'll see if I can include it in the main review. This is basically just a walk around and a quality control video, and I've got to say, as far as quality is concerned, especially when you consider the price point, I can't honestly think of anybody that is getting close to Royal Enfield. You know, Royal Enfield's taken some time to catch people up, but in my view, they've now overtaken them. It's just everything you look at this bike, even when it comes down to the bracketry for the screen and for holding the clock on and everything else, everything is just, it just oozes quality. Everything's really well finished and really well put together. I can't find anything really to complain about in the walk around when it comes to quality. There are no rough edges on this bike anywhere. It is all absolutely as, you know, a prospective owner of a motorcycle could wish for. You know, there are no disappointments on this bike whatsoever. Right, hopefully the weatherman says that the weather's going to be a bit better for the rest of the week. I've got to say, it has warmed up while I've been filming this video. Hopefully that's something we can look forward to for the next week or so, because winter does seem to have hit us early here in East Yorkshire. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you would leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Now, if you do that, please ensure that your notifications are enabled. That way YouTube will let you know whenever I upload a new video. Now, you can help me out in other ways via the Patreon page or via the super thanks button down below here. I just think of that as a tipping jar. If you enjoy my content and you want to show your appreciation, that's what that's there for. But there's absolutely no expectations from anybody. I am, of course, going to be back on Friday, so until then, please ride safely, and I'll see you soon.